Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Radha Kalashanjaji morning program, Bhagavatam. Today we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 7. We'll read text 1 through 20. The title of the chapter is Further Inquiries by Vidura. Hope everybody had a wonderful Balaram Purnima yesterday. This morning, all I could think about was, how did Rajeshwari do all day after getting up for Mangal Arati? Did you stay awake? We give a hand for Rajeshwari. She got up for Mangal Arati, then all the festival, and then went to school. Wow. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Nanda-braja ranjana. Nanda-braja ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana-braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Kala Sanji Radha Kala Sanji Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Radhakala Chandraji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please, we'll do the Sanskrit and English, please. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devyam sartvatim jisyam tato jayam yudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Sri Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayasa abreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering the service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed, and the loving service unto the personality Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gantimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Shakshuram Mityam Nena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, can we turn to 375, please? So, the title of the chapter is Further Inquiries by Vidura. And who is Vidura inquiring to? Maitreya Rishi, right? Uddhava, out of his humility, said Vidura was asking questions and kept continuing to ask questions and says, you know what? There's a senior to me. You should go to him and ask him questions. And here we are. So 375. We'll go to the Sanskrit, go through the Sanskrit translation and purport. Today's theme for Srimad Bhagavatam class is how the pure soul becomes conditioned. So how can the pure soul become conditioned? Okay. Desta kalato sav deshatas kalato yasav avastahatya savto nayata avyastata svato natyaha aviluptava bodhoatma aviluptyava bodha atma sayuge yuge tat aja kataham sayuje tat jaya kataham deshata kalato yasav avastatya svato natyaha avilyupatava bodho atma sayuge atjaya kataham Uj. Oh, please somebody. Deshata kalato yasav avastata svato nataha avyupota vabodatam sayuje yuta jayatutam yujayatam disyata kalato yosav svato nayataha avilopta vabodatyam sayuje yataya jayatam Okay, synonyms please together. Deshata, circumstantial. Kalataha, by the influence of time. Ya, one who. Asu, the living entity. Avasata, by situation. Svataha, by dream. Anyata, by others. Avilupta, extinct. Avabodhya, consciousness. Atma, pure self. Saha, he. Ujayate, engaged. Enjaya, the essence. Katam, how is he so? Translation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Please repeat. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Can somebody read the purport, please? We have a mic right there.
The consciousness of the living being is always present and never changes under any circumstances, as above mentioned. When a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present, in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjecture about his futures. Also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. How then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? The conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya, potency, as confirmed in both Vishnu Purana and the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as Prakriti, and in the Vishnu Purana he is mentioned as the Parashakti. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, as potency and not as potent. The potent can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent at any stage. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. The Jiva potency, or the Kshetrajna Shakti of the Lord, has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma samya. And in this way he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to the influence of the avidya potency, he can never equal the Supreme Potent.
So the theme is how the pure soul becomes conditioned. So what does avidya mean? Srila Prabhupada uses it 3 or 4 times in this purport. Ignorance. So you go through your life, and first we're infants, right? We're young. Then we go to middle school age. Then we become youth. Then we turn to old age. And this whole entire time going through these different experiences in life, these different stages in life, do you forget who you are? Do you forget who you are? Some people are saying yes. Please explain. How do you forget who you are if you're going through these different circumstances? Nrsingarupa back there too.
I remember like 15 years ago, somebody asked me how old I was, or no, maybe it was like 10 years ago. I just turned 30, and I was like 21. I just like said it. Like I actually believed I was like, and I was, wait a minute, no, I'm not 21, I'm 30. So that's what came to mind for me.
So temporarily we might have some moments of insanity, right? Where we I don't know if that's forgetfulness, Sringarupa, or desire. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Jose, you were going to say something?
Because of thus we have a real identity, we are creating a new one. Like a high school degree and Ecuadorian in my case, and you know.
So we're changing our perspective of who we are, right? By different identities, right? We might be students one life, we might become teachers the other part of life. We might become we're children at one point, and then we may become parents and stuff. So our identity changes. But do we ever forget that we are Nanda-braja or Jose or Nisringarupa? Not necessarily. We really remember that I am who I am. I may have gone through all these experiences and have a different perspective of, what's going on in my life and my identity, but we always remember that, unless we have some, sickness that comes about that we have, sometimes in late life we might get, Alzheimer's, and we might forget. But in general, through even our material situation, we can remember that we are who we are. But then the scriptures are explaining that we're a pure spirit soul, that we aren't the material body. But if we're pure spirit soul, and even in this lifetime I can remember who I am, what is going on? Why can't I remember that I am a spirit soul? So why have I come into ignorance that I am not who I truly am, or who I am beyond the material existence? Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the question, right? Is that you're telling me that the spirit soul is Sat Chidananda, and I've forgotten this. So, but I can remember when I was, 8 years old playing baseball with my father. So why am I forgetting this? So this is what will come up in this chapter, is why has the spirit soul come into this ignorance that they don't remember who they truly are. The interesting thing is that Krishna has three energies, right? He has his internal energy, his external energy, and what's the other one? Marginal energy. So who are we? We're marginal. What is the external potency? What's that? Internal? Did I say external? External? Okay, external, yes, the material world. What's the internal? Spiritual world. Okay? So as the marginal energy, you really get a sense of how dependent we are. Because either way, we are being influenced by one of these. If we're in the spiritual energy, surrounding ourselves with spiritual, transcendental activities, then we start to identify with the internal potency of Krishna. But the spirit soul, if they're engaging in material activities or the external energy, then they start to think of themselves as material energy. And yet we're so dependent on Krishna that we don't have we still depend on Him to give us either one. So we are so minute, right? We have the quality of Sat Chit Ananda. We have like the ocean, right? A drop. You take the drop of ocean, and the quality of that drop is like the quality of the ocean, but yet it's just a small drop. And so similarly, we're so small that we might have these qualities of Krishna, but we're so dependent on Him through either our external material existence or our spiritual existence. Okay, let's go to number 6, please. Yes, please. Can we have the microphone?
Okay. Yes? I am remembering something last summer sometime. I had blood drawn and I passed out, which had never happened before.
Oh my
But
gosh.
while I was, I lost consciousness. And then when I was coming back, there were a few seconds where I had no idea where I was. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who I was looking at. And it was like the most bewildering experience of my life. Like I was just so deeply confused. And I'm kind of imagining the soul like constantly feeling like that, like while we're here. And it's very interesting.
And at some points, it just comes kind of like natural to us. So
Yeah,
we
we've
kind of
constructed a whole identity to navigate.
Yeah, you can wake up sometimes in the like, if you're not at your regular house, like you're at somebody's, you're traveling or something like that, and you wake up in the morning, and you're like where am I? You're like things are in the right place, and you forget for a second where you are. Yeah, yeah, I hear you that it can be. There's these times that we can be very, very bewildered, but in general, because we're in this dream state, it must always be somewhat bewildering. 6, please, translation. Anybody with a mic?
The Lord, as the supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entity's activities result in misfortune and misery?
If Krishna is with us, Krishna being the absolute truth, then how, if he's with us, do we come in contact with material nature? Krishna's activities are never mundane, right? They're always spiritual. And yet he's with the living entity, and we take up mundane qualities. We take up mundane activities. So this is the question of Vidura. How can Krishna be with us and all of his activities be pure and absolute, but yet us, even in contact with Krishna with him inside our heart, start to be bewildered by material nature? 8, please. Is there any questions or thoughts? 7, excuse me, thank you.
O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up.
8, please.
Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God-conscious.
9.
Sri Maitreya said, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman, or the personality Godhead, is overcome by illusion, or Maya. And at the same time, they maintain that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic.
Srila Prabhupada has a wonderful example in this purport. In the purport, he's explaining that the sun is the cause of rainfall, or the cause of clouds, and also the cause of snowfall. So the sun, I'm not so much a scientist, but we understand through evaporation of water, water lifts, condenses, and becomes a cloud, and then that's where rain comes from, right? Very short and so sweet, right? If it's cold enough, that rain is no longer rain, it's snow, right? So this process is caused by the sun, and yet in the state where there's rainfall or sun or snow, who is being affected by the snow and the rainfall? Who gets affected by that? Us, right? The living entities on the earth, right? They catch the snow. They have to put on the warm clothes. They have to build a nice house with great insulation to make sure that they stay, warm. Is the sun being affected by those things? No. So the sun is above the clouds, And it's not, those things are just so small to the sun. They're just like insignificant, right? However, are the sun rays affected by these things? Yeah. What happens when it's cloudy?
The sun rays can't get through.
Yeah, they're blocked by the sun, right? What's that?
The rays themselves aren't necessarily affected. Our perception of things.
Yes, but they're stopped by the clouds, right? I'm going to a direction and then this thing gets in my way. So in a sense, the sun rays are being affected because they're not continuing their process, right, through the clouds. And even then, So we can see that even the sun rays are the energy of the sun. They're not necessarily the sun themselves, right? So similarly, Krishna can be Krishna, and he can have his material energy, and the material energy can be subject to these different things, right? But yet Krishna, as the absolute person, or the supreme person, which everything emanates from, he's not being subject to those. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Hi, Kishore. Nice to see you, buddy. Okay.
Text then.
Oh, just a second. Actually, I'm sorry. There's one more thing also that Srila Prabhupada brings up in this purport, and it's the analogy of the spark that comes out of the fire. So a fire is made up of so many sparks. You'll see them shooting out, this and that. You'll see them popping and cracking and stuff in the sparks. But the spark of fire, who jumps outside the fire, what happens to that spark? It goes out. It burns out, right? So this is like our state, is that we're like sparks of the fire with the same quality of spark, but we've decided to jump away from the fire. We've decided to jump out of the spiritual world, and now we're in the situation where we're fleeting, right? We're dying. We're in this miserable condition. So, this is the state of our material existence. 10, please.
The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off.
So a man who dreams seeing his head cut off. This purport is very heavy. Because the very first part of it, Srila Prabhupada talks about a teacher who threatens their kids to chop their heads off and put them up on the wall. Maybe this is a warrior. Maybe this is a Satriya teacher, And he's explaining this because Maya is like this. Maya is, at every turn, we're seeing death, right? So many people dying. So even in our life, we have experience of people leaving us, dying. And yet, that warning is on the wall. Boom. Death is going to, and still we turn our head, right? Oh, that's not going to happen to me. But if we start to use a little intelligence, we start to see that head on that wall. We start to see death. And we're not necessarily about fear or this or that, but we start to see it as a reality. I'm going to die. My friends are going to die. My children are going to die. My parents are going to die. What am I going to do about this? We're constantly being beat up by Maya. We have some happiness, and then right around the bend is what? Distress. Misery. Distress, right? And we keep on going through this cycle over and over and over and over. We're like banging our head against a wall. What's that? Yeah, I just banged my head against the microphone. But eventually, we start to see that this material nature is quite frustrating. So then the living entity starts to desire to get out of it. And so they start dreaming about being God. If I can't manipulate this material energy, and I can see I have a little control, so then I start to dream that I am God. And this is also part of this translation in the sense of dreaming of getting your head cut off. If you are dreaming about being God, how can you be God? If you're dreaming of getting your head cut off, or you're seeing your head get cut off, how can you get your head cut off? If you get your head cut off, you can't see it. It's just somebody comes, you're done, right? So similarly, we can see that just dreaming of God is pretty ridiculous, right? How can you be God and still dreaming of being God? Then finally, the conditioned soul realizes that they're serving either way. No matter what, they have to serve. They finally come to the conclusion that no matter what, I am in a position where I am serving. What the heck? I don't like this serving. So being frustrated because their service isn't giving them any happiness, they just start to desire to not serve at all. So what is this called? What's this situation called? Anybody have any ideas? Who think like this? I'm tired of serving. Huh? Huh? Burned out people? Impersonalists, right? I'm so sick and tired of this serving. Let me just emerge into the absolute truth. Okay? I am a little frustrated because I've been dreaming about being God, and that's not working out so well. That's not working out so well at all. And I'm tired of this service, so let me just merge into the energy of the Lord. Let me see my notes here. Okay, so yes. So we're dreaming about being God. We realize that we're serving. In that frustration, we even decide to, hey, let me merge into the Supreme Person. Okay, number 11, please.
As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter.
I would like if we read this purport. This kind of gets to the essence of the theme about why we are being conditioned. Would you mind reading the purport, Prabhupada Priya, please?
The Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entities are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver, but because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering, although in fact the moon is fixed. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appear to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries, although in the pure soul such qualities are completely absent. The word pratiyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of having one's head cut off in a dream, is significant here. The reflection of the moon on the water is the separated rays of the moon and not the actual moon. The separated parts and parcels of the Lord entangled in the water of material existence have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all in touch with water. The light of the sun and moon reflected on matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. The living symptoms are compared to the light of the sun and the moon, illuminating material manifestations like trees and mountains. The reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the pure monistic philosophy develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and the moon themselves, although they are always connected. The light of the moon spread throughout the sky appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet as it is personal, and the living entities on the moon planet are also personal. In the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears to be more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness. Although the light of the moon is the same everywhere, due to being differently appreciated, it appears different. Similarly, the light of the Lord is equally distributed everywhere, but due to being differently received, it appears to be different. One should not, therefore, accept the reflection of the moon on the water as actual and misunderstand the whole situation through monistic philosophy. The quivering quality of the moon is also variable. When the water is standing still, there is no quivering. A more settled, conditioned soul quivers less, but due to material connection, the quivering quality is more or less present everywhere.
So, how can somebody explain in their own words what Srila Prabhupada is saying here about the moon and the reflection? Jessa?
The moon's light is spread everywhere, and then that's kind of like the impersonal feature. And then there's the moon planet itself, which is personal, and there are residents on the moon planet, and that's like the spiritual world in Krishna. And then the energy of the Lord is perceived as differently by the viewer. So one finds the moon in the wilderness to be less beautiful than the moon on the Taj Mahal. And then the moon reflected on water, it appears to be moving, but it's not actually moving. Just like the soul in material nature appears to be qualified with matter when it's not actually.
So if we're looking into the water and the water's really wavy, right? It looks like the moon is also waving, right? So similarly, the conditioned soul, because we're looking at the reflection of this material world, can look like that death is, how should I say, has these miseries are reality, right? However, that we can understand that this is just a reflection of real life, that the conditioned soul is being seen through the material nature, and they're subject to the material nature, like the water. The moon's reflection is subject to the condition of the water, right? So we can look at like a real calm water is maybe in the mode of goodness, right? And some little ripples are like the mode of passion, and then maybe some big waves are like, the mode of ignorance. And so the subject, the water is what the conditioned soul is associating with. But the moon, or the spirit soul, is not subject to the moving of the water. They're always settled. They're always in peace, and they're always in happiness, right? So through the condition of material nature, we start to get confused. We start to see the self as part of this, these miseries, that these are the way that life is that's just the way it is. And eventually we start to ask the questions we spoke about before. So we're at 8:26. I was a little bit slow on class today. I apologize because there was a few more things. But any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Yes, Dina.
At the end of this purport, it said, the water will never be like still. I thought that was a really interesting point. I don't know if you can scroll down on it, because I'm not sure what number this is. But
say that again?
At the end, it was talking about how the water can never be reflected perfectly. Like, yeah, it's like always quivering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting point. Because it's not the moon, so it can't reflect it perfectly. There's always going to be some sort of a ripple in it.
So we might look like we're in the mode of goodness, right? We're in the mode of goodness, and the water's real still. And it might look like we're, happy. There is some happiness in this material, but there actually is some quivering in there. There's some unsettledness always there.
Yeah, I was thinking about it like the ocean. Like the ocean, just because you're in like a patch of ocean that's like very like still, it doesn't mean that the waves aren't going to come. It doesn't mean that there's no movement going on underwater, that type of thing. Or there's always like a little bit of a ripple. I thought that was interesting.
And just through a little bit of influence of something else too, that water can get, the wind blows and the waves come. So like material life, we might have some mode of goodness, but then all of a sudden some kind of influence comes out, right? Other influence comes into our preview. I was thinking, adi atmaka, adi kleshika, adi bhotika, these different miseries come from different living entities or from our own mind and body. Prabhupada Priya, you have something to add, please?
Yeah, I was thinking that one point that's being made here is that as long as we're identifying with matter, the body and our bodily situation, then we're always just going to be disturbed, just like the reflection of the moon on water is always rippling. It's never completely still. So, yeah, because the nature, I like that point that he says that the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. So one of the qualities of matter is that it's always changing. Everything's temporary. So that means it's just, matter is constantly changing. And it's always in a state of constant flux. So when we identify with matter, we also think that our lives are changing, that our situations are changing, that our body's changing, right? That we're growing, that we're getting old, that we're getting sick, that we're getting healthy again, that we're in one place, that we're in it's like, but actually the soul is unchangeable. Actually we're not changing at all. We're like the moon that's fixed there in the sky that's totally like fine. So it reminded me of one purport from the first canto, from the prayers of Queen Kunti, where Prabhupada says that the suffering that the suffering and fearfulness that we experience in this world is like being chased by a tiger in a dream. Actually, there's no tiger, there's no suffering, but it's just simply a matter of dreams, Prabhupada said. So all this adversity and suffering and stress and things that we experience in life, it's actually like, it's just like a dream, because this whole existence is like, it's an illusory existence. So our problem is that we identify with it. As soon as we stop identifying with it, then we'll realize that actually I'm a soul. I'm eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And these things actually can't touch me.
One time my son, he was 9 years old. And my son, when he was young, he was very energetic. I mean, very, very energetic. And so I told him to go take a walk. I was like, go take a walk. And he comes back and he goes, Dad, he goes, this life is like a nightmare. He said, we're in this spiritual world asleep, and this is like one big nightmare. And I was like, okay. I was like, so where'd you hear that? Where'd you hear that? He goes, that was his answer. I was like, okay. Some realization popped, That's all his answer was. I was like, okay. So yes, his life is like a nightmare. The son was having that realization that it's a big nightmare, that we should wake up. Any other comments, questions, concerns? It is 8:30. Huh? Yeah. Instead of criticisms, we can say concerns. I'm concerned when you said this. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Radha Kalashanda ji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Pramanande. Hari Hari Bo.